I need to tell you something uncomfortable. You've probably looked through a person the same way Jackson Reed looked through Claire. Maybe it was someone who cleaned your office, or delivered your food, or stood behind a register scanning your groceries. You saw their hands move but not their face. Heard their voice but not their words. That's not a judgment. That's just what survival in a busy world does to us. We turn people into functions. Jackson Reed turned his nanny into a function for 7 months. Didn't know she grew up in 7 different foster homes. Didn't know she sent most of her paycheck to the woman who'd taken her in when the system gave up. Didn't know she had his eyes, his laugh, his blood. Didn't know she was dying. And here's the part that should haunt all of us. When the hospital called to say she needed $240,000 for treatment, he thought it was a shakedown. So he said no. Welcome back to Mind of Titans. Before we dive into this story, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that might change how you see the world. Drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from. I love seeing this community grow across the globe. And if this story hits you the way I think it will, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Now let's get into it. Here's what you need to understand about Jackson Reed before you judge him too harshly. 3 years ago, he learned that love is the most expensive thing you can invest in, and the returns can bankrupt you overnight. His wife Vanessa died on a Tuesday. Regular Tuesday. She was driving Piper to gymnastics practice when a delivery truck ran a red light at 45 miles per hour. Piper walked away with a broken collarbone. Vanessa didn't walk away at all. The truck driver had been working a 16-hour shift for a company that paid per delivery, not per hour. He fell asleep for maybe 3 seconds. That's all it takes. 3 seconds, and the person you built your entire life around is just gone. Jackson did what people with money do when grief is too big to feel. He threw lawyers at it. Sued the trucking company, the driver, the dispatcher, the vehicle manufacturer. Won $8 million in settlements. Put every penny in a trust for Piper that she can't touch until she's 25. Blood money, his therapist called it. Jackson fired the therapist. But here's the part that broke something permanent in him. Vanessa's parents, people he'd spent holidays with for 12 years, people who'd held Piper as a newborn, they sued him too. Claimed he'd been controlling during the marriage, that Vanessa had confided she wanted a divorce, that she'd been unhappy. They wanted half his assets. Said they were doing it for Vanessa's memory. They settled out of court for $2.3 million. Then stopped returning Piper's calls. So Jackson learned the lesson grief teaches: when you have money, everyone has a price. Even love. Especially love. After that, he started seeing people differently. Not as humans with complicated feelings and messy lives. As risks. As potential lawsuits. As threats disguised in friendly packaging. And then came the nannies. 14 of them in 2.5 years. Nanny number 1 quit via text message at 9 p.m. on a Wednesday. Just, I can't do this anymore. Left Piper alone in the house. Jackson was in San Francisco for a board meeting. His neighbor found Piper sitting on the front steps at 10:30, still in her pajamas. Number 2 turned out to have 3 different aliases and a warrant in Florida for check fraud. Jackson's background check company missed it because she'd applied under her married name. Number 3 was lovely, genuinely kind, until Jackson discovered she was running a supplement pyramid scheme and had recruited 5 other parents from Piper's school. She'd been using his address as her business headquarters on promotional materials. Number 4 had an emotional breakdown in the middle of making lunch. Locked herself in the bathroom for 6 hours. When the police finally convinced her to open the door, she told them she'd just realized she'd wasted her entire life on other people's children and couldn't look at Piper without crying. Number 5 brought her boyfriend to the house when Jackson was at work. Twice. The boyfriend had a record for burglary. Jackson only found out because his housekeeper mentioned the man who comes on Thursdays. 6 through 9 quit within their first month. Said Piper was difficult. One said she was emotionally disturbed and needs professional help, not a nanny. Piper was 6 years old and grieving her mother. Number 10 lasted 4 months, a record. Then Jackson got a call from his credit card company about unusual charges. She'd been using his Amex to pay her rent. Small amounts, spread out. $850 here, $600 there. She thought he wouldn't notice because he had so much. 11 and 12 were fine. Completely competent. They quit because they got better offers. Families who actually talked to them like humans, who didn't have cameras in the kitchen. Number 13 had a prescription drug problem. Jackson found empty pill bottles hidden behind the cleaning supplies. When he confronted her, she cried and said she was in pain, needed help. He gave her 2 weeks severance and the number for a rehab facility. Never heard if she went. By the time he got to nanny number 14, Jackson had refined his system. 73-page contract with ironclad NDAs. Cameras in every room except bathrooms and the nanny's bedroom. Background checks that went back 3 generations. Monthly reviews of phone records and bank statements. And a salary deliberately set low enough that only someone truly desperate would take it. He told himself he was protecting Piper. He was actually building a cage around both of them. Piper changed after her mom died. She stopped laughing the way kids laugh, that full body, can't catch your breath kind of joy. She got quiet. Started organizing her toys in perfectly straight lines. Would check 3 times before bed to make sure Jackson had locked all the doors. 7 years old and already afraid the world would take something else from her. Jackson bought her everything. A playroom that looked like a toy store exploded. Art lessons with a private instructor. A piano she never touched. Trips to Disney World where she held his hand the entire time and barely smiled for the photos. Money couldn't buy back her childhood, but it was all he knew how to give. When Claire Donovan walked through his door for the nanny interview, Jackson saw exactly what he expected to see. Another person who needed something from him. She was 39, looked tired in a way that soap and sleep wouldn't fix. Her clothes were clean but worn, the kind of worn that comes from washing the same 5 outfits for years. She carried a purse held together with safety pins at one corner. Her resume had gaps. 3 years unaccounted for here, 18 months there. Her references were minimal. A woman who ran a diner in Reno, a landlord who said she always paid rent on time, kept to herself. Red flags everywhere. But she asked only one question during the entire interview. Does Piper like to be read to, or does she prefer telling her own stories? Something about that question made Jackson pause. Not what are the hours, or what's the pay, or do I get holidays off? Just, does your daughter like stories? He hired her because she seemed the least likely to cause problems. Quiet people don't make waves. Desperate people don't risk steady paychecks. He offered her $2,200 a month, live-in. The basement room with a narrow window and the bathroom down the hall. Same contract as the others, pages of rules about what she could and couldn't do, say, photograph, share. Claire signed without reading it all. Her hand shook a little when she wrote her name. Jackson noticed. Made a mental note, financial instability. We'll need to watch carefully. What he didn't notice, the way her eyes went wet when she first saw Piper. The way she touched the doorframe of the house like she was steadying herself. The way she stared at a photograph on the mantel, young Jackson, maybe 6 years old, at some beach with his adoptive parents, and whispered something under her breath. He didn't notice because he'd stopped looking at people's faces years ago. He only looked at their hands, checking for what they might take from him. If you've ever built walls so high you couldn't see who was trying to reach you, hit that subscribe button. Like this video and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. This story is about to show you what those walls actually cost. Claire had to tell. Jackson noticed it on her 3rd day. Every morning at 6:15, before Piper woke up, Claire would stand in the hallway outside Jackson's home office. Just stand there. 30 seconds, maybe a minute. Staring at the door like she was working up courage to knock. She never knocked. Just stood, breathed, then walked away to start breakfast. Jackson watched this through the hallway camera. Marked it in his notes. Subject displays hesitation near office. Possible interest in confidential materials. What he didn't see, Claire wasn't looking at the door. She was looking at the floor, at the spot where, 40 years ago when this house belonged to different people, she'd hidden a toy car under a loose floorboard. The floorboard was gone now, replaced during renovations. But she remembered. This was her house first. Before the Reeds. Before the money. when it was just a regular house where two kids lived in foster care for 8 months before the system split them up. Jackson had bought it 6 years ago. Never knew its history. Claire knew every corner. Week 1, Jackson documented everything. She hummed while cooking. Same melody every morning. He ran it through a music recognition app. No results. Made a note. Subject uses unidentifiable audio patterns. Possible coded communication. The melody was a lullaby their birth mother used to sing. Claire didn't even realize she remembered it. She flinched when the toaster popped. Wouldn't use the garbage disposal, said the sound hurt her ears. Turned lights off in rooms she wasn't using, even though Jackson told her not to worry about the electric bill. Poverty habits. The kind you can't shake even when someone else is paying. Jackson noted, subject exhibits anxiety around appliances and excessive concern with utility conservation. Possibly grew up in financially unstable environment. Confirm for leverage if needed. She asked Piper questions that seemed too personal for a new nanny. Does your dad ever talk about when he was little? Has he always lived in big houses like this? Does he have any brothers or sisters? Piper said no to all 3. Jackson made a note. Subject fishing for personal information. Potentially building profile for exploitation. He didn't consider that these were the questions of someone trying to understand if her brother remembered her. If he'd ever mentioned the sister he lost. If he'd built the kind of life she dreamed he might have. Week 2, Claire started doing something that made Jackson's blood pressure spike. She'd take Piper to the park. Fine, that was in her job description. But she'd sit on the same bench every single time. Not the one near the playground. Not the one by the fountain. A specific bench on the east side that had a perfect view of the data core systems building 3 blocks away. She'd stare at it while Piper played. Sometimes for 10, 15 minutes straight. Jackson assigned a security contractor to follow them. Discreetly. The contractor reported, subject appears to be surveilling your office building. Purpose unknown. No photographic equipment observed. Possible reconnaissance for third party. Jackson drafted a termination letter that night. Had his lawyer review it for any liability gaps. But then Piper said something at dinner. Claire's teaching me about constellations. She knows all their names. Jackson looked up from his phone. That's nice. She said her brother taught her when they were kids. They didn't have TV, so they just looked at stars. His finger hovered over the send button on the termination email. Did she say anything else about her brother? Just that she lost him a long time ago and she thinks about him every day. Piper pushed peas around her plate. That's sad, right? Losing someone you love. Jackson closed his laptop. Week 3, the strange behaviors intensified. Claire started leaving things around the house. Small things. A paperback book on the coffee table, where the red fern grows. Jackson noticed because it was the only book in his entire house that looked old. Cracked spine, yellowed pages, someone's name written in child handwriting on the inside cover. Jackson R. Not Jackson Reed. Just Jackson R. He checked his office inventory, hadn't owned this book. Checked Piper's room, not hers either. He set it on his desk. Meant to ask Claire about it. Never did. 2 days later, a sketch appeared on the refrigerator. Piper's artwork, but the subject was unusual. 2 stick figures, one big, one small, holding hands under a tree. That's me and Claire, Piper explained. She said it reminded her of a drawing she made when she was my age. Her and her brother, before they went to different families. Jackson stared at that drawing for a long time. Week 4, Claire got sick. Not theatrical sick. Not calling attention to herself sick. The kind of sick where you try to hide it because you can't afford to lose the job. Jackson noticed she'd stopped eating breakfast. She'd cook for Piper, make coffee for him, then disappear to her room. He checked the kitchen camera footage. She was running to the bathroom every morning, hand over her mouth. Most employers would ask if she was okay. Jackson called his lawyer. If an employee becomes ill on the job, what's my liability if I terminate? Is it a disability? I don't know. She hasn't disclosed anything. Then you're protected under at-will employment. But Jackson didn't fire her. Because Piper had started laughing again. Real laughs, the kind she hadn't done since Vanessa died. And she was sleeping through the night without checking the locks. So he just watched. Week 5, Claire broke protocol. She was cleaning Jackson's office, not supposed to be in there without supervision, but he was on a call and waved her in absently. She was dusting the bookshelf when her hand stopped on a photograph. Jackson, age 6, at the beach. His adoptive parents on either side. He's holding something in his hand, too blurry to make out. Claire picked up the frame. Her whole body went still. Jackson was still on his conference call, camera off, but he saw her in his peripheral vision. Saw her trace her finger across the glass. Saw her lips move, whispering something. When she set the frame down, her hand was shaking. Jackson ended the call early. That's an old photo. My parents' house in Connecticut. Claire turned. Her eyes were wet. You look happy. I was 6. Everything's happy when you're 6. Not everything. She picked up her cleaning supplies. Some of us had to grow up at 6. She left before he could respond. That night, Jackson pulled up the security footage and watched that moment 12 times. Watched her face. Watched her touch that photograph like it was sacred. He ran a deeper background check on Claire Donovan. Marriage license showed she'd been married at 19, divorced at 23. Maiden name, Donovan. But there was a birth certificate, original name, before foster care, before everything. Claire Renwick. Jackson's birth name was Jackson Renwick. Changed when the Thornwells adopted him at age 7. He stared at his computer screen until 4 a.m. Coincidence? Had to be. Renwick wasn't that uncommon. And even if she was his sister, she would have said something. She wouldn't have applied to be his nanny. She wouldn't have watched him for 5 weeks through this charade. Unless she was waiting. Unless she was building trust. Unless she wanted something. Jackson's phone buzzed. Email from the security contractor. Update on subject. She visited Metro General Hospital Oncology Department today during her day off. Stayed 3 hours. Couldn't get details on why. HIPAA. But thought you should know. Oncology. Jackson closed his laptop. He didn't fire her. But he stopped watching the footage every night. Because some part of him, the part he'd buried at age 6 when they took his baby sister away, knew exactly who Claire Donovan was. And he wasn't ready to deal with what that meant. Pause right here. If you're feeling that knot in your stomach, that's the story working. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes we need to be reminded that the people right in front of us are the ones we've been looking for all along. The call came on a Tuesday morning while Jackson was in a board meeting about the Q3 earnings report. Mr. Reed? This is Dr. Patel from Metro General Hospital. We have Claire Donovan here. I'm in a meeting. Sir, she's listed you as her emergency contact and I'll call you back. He didn't call back. 3 hours later, his assistant knocked on his office door. Mr. Reed? The hospital has called 4 times. They say it's urgent about your employee. Jackson was reviewing a contract for a merger worth $340 million. Tell them I'll handle it tomorrow. They said she collapsed. They said it's tomorrow. The assistant left. Jackson signed the merger documents. Initialed 18 pages. Called his publicist about the press release. Ordered dinner from the Italian place he liked. At 11 p.m., his phone rang. A known number. He almost didn't answer. Mr. Reed, this is Dr. Patel again. I apologize for calling your personal line, but I need you to understand the situation. Ms. Donovan has stage 4 pancreatic cancer. It's metastasized to her liver and lungs. Without immediate intervention, she has maybe 6 to 8 weeks. Jackson set down his whiskey. She never disclosed a medical condition. She was probably trying to keep working. A lot of patients do that when they don't have support systems. What's the treatment? There's a clinical trial at Sloan Kettering. Experimental, but she's a good candidate. It's expensive, about $240,000 upfront. Her insurance doesn't cover experimental treatments. Jackson did the math in his head. $240,000 was 0.006% of his net worth. He'd spent more than that on the watch he was currently wearing. Doctor, I'm sympathetic, but I'm not responsible for employee medical costs beyond what's legally required. She signed a contract acknowledging, "She's dying, Mr. Reed." "I understand this is complicated," Dr. Patel continued, "but she has no family, no other emergency contacts. She's been asking for you. She says she has something to tell you. Something important." "I'll think about it." "Sir, we need a decision by tomorrow morning to get her into the trial." "I said I'll think about it." Jackson hung up. He pulled up Claire's file, read through her contract. Everything was legally airtight. He had no obligation. Not morally. Not legally. He opened his computer and pulled up the security footage from that afternoon when Claire had touched his childhood photograph. Watched her face. The recognition. The grief. He opened the background check file. Saw the birth certificate. Claire Renwick. Opened his own records. The adoption papers he'd requested years ago when he was trying to find his sister. Sister's name, Claire. Born April 14th. Last seen, November 1987, Silver Hills Foster Home, Reno, Nevada. Claire Donovan's birthday, April 14th, grew up in Nevada. Jackson closed the laptop. He could pay for the treatment. Right now. One phone call. Instead, he poured another whiskey and went to bed. The next morning, Dr. Patel called again. "Mr. Reed, we need your decision. The trial coordinator can get her in this afternoon if..." "I'm not paying for it." "Sir, she's an employee, not family. I have no legal obligation to cover medical treatments. If she'd wanted help, she should have been honest about her condition before accepting employment. She was probably afraid she wouldn't get hired. That's not my problem." "Mr. Reed, I don't think you understand." "I understand perfectly. The answer is no. Don't call me again about this." He blocked the hospital's number. That afternoon, his assistant brought him a package. Manila envelope, addressed to Jackson Reed in handwriting he didn't recognize. Inside, a letter. 4 pages, handwritten. He started reading. "Dear Jackson, though you probably don't remember me calling you Jackie." Got halfway through the first paragraph and stopped. Set it aside. Told himself he'd read it later. 11 days later, his assistant knocked again. "Mr. Reed?" Metro General called the main office line. They said Claire Donovan passed away this morning. They're asking about her belongings and have legal handle it. Whatever the minimum required is. They said she left a message for you. She said, "I don't want to hear it." His assistant stood there for a moment, looking at him with something Jackson couldn't quite name. Disappointment? Disgust? "Is that all?" he asked. "Yes, sir." She closed the door quietly. Jackson returned to his email. That night, Piper asked where Claire was. She had to leave. She was sick. "Is she okay?" "I don't know." "Did you help her?" Jackson looked at his 7-year-old daughter. Thought about lying. Decided on a different truth. "No." "Why not?" "Because I don't help people who lie to me." Piper stared at him for a long time. Then she went to her room and closed the door. She stopped talking to him after that. Not in an angry way. Just stopped. Like he'd become furniture. Someone who existed in the house but didn't matter. 2 weeks later, Jackson finally read the letter. All 4 pages. Read about how Claire had found him 3 years ago. How she'd saved money for 2 years to hire a lawyer to unseal the adoption records. How she'd gotten diagnosed with cancer the same month she finally tracked him down. Read about how she'd applied to be Piper's nanny because she wanted to know him without the pressure of revealing who she was right away. How she'd planned to tell him once she'd proven she could be trusted. Read about the memories she had, or didn't have, because she'd been too young. But their foster mother Maria had told her stories. About how 6-year-old Jackson had held baby Claire during the worst nights. How he'd shared his food with her when they didn't have enough. How he'd cried for months after they separated them. Read the last paragraph 3 times. "I know you won't read this until I'm gone. I know you, Jackie. You won't let yourself believe it while there's still risk. But I want you to know, I forgive you. I know the world made you hard. I know you had to survive. I just wish I'd gotten to see you smile at me one more time and know you remembered. That I wasn't invisible. I love you. I never stopped. Claire Renwick." Jackson sat in his office until sunrise, letter in his hands. 3 weeks after Claire died, a package arrived. From a lawyer's office in Reno. Inside, a DNA test. Claire had filed it with her lawyer to be sent after her death. 99.7% probability of full sibling match. Also in the package, photographs. 2 kids, ages 6 and maybe 2. The boy holding the girl. Both of them laughing. A hospital bracelet. Baby girl Renwick. A toy car, old and battered, the one Claire had hidden under the floorboard in the house that became Jackson's 40 years later. And a note from the lawyer. Ms. Donovan wanted you to have these. She said you used to look for her. She wanted you to know she never stopped looking for you either. She found you first. Jackson didn't move from his desk for 6 hours. Then he called his assistant. Find out where they buried Claire Donovan. I'll check. 20 minutes later, sir, she was buried at Hart Island. Potter's Field. The city handles it when there's no money for. I know what it is. Hart Island. Where they bury people nobody claims. Mass graves. No headstones. Jackson had $43 million in liquid assets. His sister was buried in an unmarked grave. He'd let her die begging for $240,000 because he thought she might be lying to him. She was telling the truth. She'd always been telling the truth. And now she was gone. I need you to do something before we finish this story. If this is making you think about someone in your life, someone you've overlooked, someone you've turned into a function instead of a person, comment their name below. Not for me. For you, so you remember. Jackson Reed moved Claire's body from Hart Island 3 months after she died. Cost him $47,000 in legal fees and city permits. They don't like disturbing Potter's Field. But money talks, even to bureaucrats who bury the forgotten. He bought a plot in a cemetery in Connecticut, near his adoptive parents, who died years ago without ever knowing they'd adopted a boy who had a sister out there somewhere. Near Vanessa, who'd never known either. The headstone is simple. Claire Renwick Donovan 1984 to 2024 she found her way home. Jackson visits every Sunday. Brings flowers. Sits on the grass and reads her that letter she wrote. All 4 pages. Out loud. Like she can still hear him. Piper comes sometimes. She's 8 now. Still doesn't talk to her father much, but she talks to Claire's headstone. Tells her about school, about the constellation book Claire gave her, about how she wishes she'd known. I would have told Daddy, Piper said once. I would have made him listen. Jackson believes her. His 7-year-old daughter had more courage than he did. He established the Claire Donovan Foundation 6 months after her death. $50 million endowment. Funds cancer treatment for people who fall through the insurance cracks. Helps separated foster siblings find each other. Covers the cost of unsealing adoption records for families torn apart by the system. Last year, they reunited 127 siblings. This year, they're on track for 200. Jackson runs the foundation himself. Shows up to every board meeting. Reads every application. Looks at the faces in the photographs. Brothers and sisters who lost each other, who spent decades wondering. He approves every single one. This story was about a man who had everything and lost what mattered because he stopped seeing people. Don't let that be you. Before you click away, I want you to do something. Think of one person in your life you've been looking through instead of looking at. The person who cleans your office. Who delivers your packages. Who serves your coffee. Who raises your kids. See them. Really see them. Ask them one real question. Learn their name. Remember they're human. Because Claire Donovan died invisible to the brother she spent 2 years searching for. And Jackson Reed has $43 million and a grave he visits alone. Money didn't save him. It just made sure he could afford a nice headstone for his regret. Don't wait for a DNA test to tell you who matters. See people now. While there's still time. Hit subscribe if this story changed something in you. Share it if you know someone who needs to hear it. And comment below, who are you going to actually see this week? Thanks for watching. And remember, the people right in front of you might be the ones you've been looking for all along.